My name is Jacob Crowe, and welcome to the Crow's Perch. Today's story is going to be part 2 of the ledge end of Edge, and if you haven't already caught up with the first part of this series of stories, I'd highly recommend doing so, as Edge's inability to work with his team, his metagaming, and his inability to see anything aside from combat as worthwhile slowly begin to come to a head in this post. So without further ado, get comfortable as I regale you with the story of the man, the myth, the legend of Edge. Part 2. So, I'm going to do a quick recap and skip a little ahead to the session, following the selfish displays of character. When the impossible shadow horror is finally defeated, they spend the next session escaping the cave and returning to the king. Of course, everyone participated in these puzzles except for Edge. He was brooding somewhere in a dark corner, hoping I'd fling more enemies at them. I had left hints in the chambers that they found the 2 legendary swords in, showing that the king had been replaced by a doppelganger. When they returned to the kingdom, they were invited to a feast. Everyone was invited. Everyone prepared to go and meet the king. Everyone except, you guessed it, Edge, the legendary Brood Boy. Crush didn't attend either, but we'll get to that part later. Edge decided that he would stay in the courtyard, practicing his swordsmanship and brooding. Alistair had brought it to my attention that I may have been coddling him, since he was flavoring his sword as something he could summon, without having a pact of the blade yet. Alistair wanted to make sure Edge wasn't taking advantage of me as a new DM. I assured him that I just wanted simplicity, and that it wasn't breaking my game, so I didn't see it as a problem. Edge puts a smug smile on while thanking me, and insisting that it's part of his character. What happens next is hilarious to say the least. I had designed these elven spies to be the king's eyes. One of them was curious since the Brood Boy himself didn't want to join the party during the feast. In an attempt to roleplay with him to make him feel a part of it, I tell him that he notices the leaves rustle on a tree above him. You know what good old Edge does? He doesn't brush it off. He doesn't ask politely, "Who's there?" No, that would be asking far too much of good old Edge. He says what all edgelords would say. Edge, come out here and show yourself. Hair flip, before I kill you. Me, are you sure about that? Edge, yeah, my character doesn't like to be spied on. He then decides to climb up the tree, since the unknown threatening presence won't comply. Now for context. The kingdom they're in is up in an enormous tree. The trees are more like branches that burst through the groundwork of this kingdom. I explain that he's basically just climbing up into an oversized branch. Needless to say, he zones out during my explanation of the environment, and this is what proceeds. Edge, I warned you. Now prepare to die. Me, I need you to roll perception if you're looking for someone. Edge, I mean, he's up this tree. How hard could it be? I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. Rolls an 8 or something low. Damn! Can't I just guess he's right in front of me? Me, no. And since you drew your weapon, they will believe you're probably hostile. Make a wisdom save. At disadvantage. Now before I get attacked, I can see how unfair it is to make NPCs have character classes. In my defense though, this wasn't supposed to be a fight. I can see how confusion may strike across the face of a player told these horrible words. Terror strikes at my heartstrings whenever I hear the dreaded words, at disadvantage. However, these spies were supposed to be these magically innate beings, so sorcerer made sense. They also happened to be high enough level to get meta magic. Heightened spell is a thing. They needed something threatening. Something that would deter the players from just attacking the king outright with wild assumptions. He rolls poorly and proceeds to bitch about how he's going to be murdered by some shitty random NPC. Myself and the other players begin to tell him that he's not just going to be murdered at the king's front door. Yes, even I as DM told him my intentions. He refuses to see this reason and continues to complain about how he's going to be killed, as if I, the DM, didn't just tell him the opposite. I have him roll to break free, to which he fails multiple times. I even have the spy show face and slowly fade back into the brush to roleplay the curiosity of the spy and show it meant no harm. Meanwhile, with the main party, everyone is enjoying a feast. Then after some roleplay and great scenes, made by everyone including Gwen, who started to enjoy playing with us, they discover that someone has poisoned the wine. Alistair was being extremely cautious and refused to drink it before testing it. Once they discover this, Edge, completely out of character, says, I rush into the castle and join them in the kitchen while they interrogate the servant that brought out the wine. No. Alistair and I begin to tell him that he's metagaming, but I let it slide for story's sake, since it's obviously about to turn into an argument. I allow him to be released, with the mysterious figure rushing off through the trees, and have him rush into the castle under the guise of getting out of dodge. Alistair sees through some in-game hints that the servant was under some kind of mind control. He kills the servant. He's lawful evil and damn good at it, and states that it was better for him to die quickly than to be tortured for trying to assassinate the king. After some more roleplay, we move forward to the king retreating to his private quarters. This is when things get dicey. Enter Crush. Crush, during the feast, decided to take up contracts, and secretly gets a contract from the prince to steal a specific royal jewel. This was the perfect opportunity to get the actual plot rolling, so Crush loved it, while Edge just made fun of him, luckily doing something that had to do with the campaign. During his mission, Crush finds the actual king, a wood elf druid that has been trapped in some magic-eating iron I homebrewed for the world. He triggers traps, which were homebrew runes I created, and the imposter king had caught wind of his secret alarm. The homebrewed runes were supposed to be a big element. They led to the escape from the alternate dimension cave, and now new ones popped up in the dungeon. I described that the dungeon has runes scribbled across the floor, which Crush evades. A little someone, however, isn't so perceptive later. The other runes which triggered, however, also triggered a hold person effect. Crush failed his save with a really low roll. Crush was screwed, and the rest of the party knew Crush had planned to sneak in to find evidence of this fake king. Alistair comes up with a genius plan to chase down the fake king, distract the royal guards, and save Crush. They get into the secret hidden chamber of captivity and wonder, and begin the fight with the BBEG of the first act. Now Edge was finally excited and no longer scrolling on his phone and trying to distract the other players and me while I was DMing. Edge gets pumped, and even more pumped when the boss summons demons and rushes straight towards him. Across the runes that I describe are etched onto the floor with reckless abandon. I had the BBEG plant these archaic runes that stored levitate in them. They specifically levitated to varying heights depending on the location. Edge was 10 feet off the ground, and out of character, nearly in tears. Edge: damn it! This is my big moment, and I can't even fight this guy! Me: you're only levitating. Why don't you ask a party member to get you down? Alistair: yeah, one of us literally flocking flies. Edge: but I don't want to waste my action. I don't want to waste my action. That simple sentence infuriated me so much. We had brought to his attention how unfulfilling it felt playing with him when all he wanted to do was focus on combat. Edge is the type of guy that calls himself an Edgelord. We tried explaining that the narrative in combat is what builds memorable encounters. To all this, he simply stated, "That's no fun if you can't attack, though." Needless to say, we eventually got through the encounter. He holds an action to get to attack after a demon flies towards him when he's floating, and eventually he gets down and takes out the other demons. All while the other party members are struggling, because he wants the good kills to himself. The king, once freed, congratulates these heroes of the kingdom. Now I know he doesn't seem that bad, yet. Honestly, I didn't think he could get any worse. But his true motives were far from revealed. I am far from done with the stories of the man, the myth, the legend of Edge. More in part 3. Oh, Edge. What went wrong? What Edge doesn't realize is that combat is just as much a part of the narrative as anything else. In fact, some of my favorite moments I've had in TTRPG play has stemmed from consequences post-combat. I think part of the reason why Edge continued to behave in this way is because the challenges presented in front of him didn't really inflict any lasting consequences. Just as soon as Edge made a big mistake by fighting this spy, the DM pulled his punch before anything could really happen. Now, I'm not saying just murder your entire party anytime they don't tell you that they're constantly searching for traps, but enforce the idea that every action has a reaction, positive or negative, or something in between. But anyway, I'd like to thank user Dizzy Quanto for posting this story, and I'm looking forward to part 3. And if you'd like to keep up with this series of stories and other stories I'll be posting every week, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell, that way you don't miss another weekly upload. Until next time, as the crow flies.